First of all, I just want to say thanks to Noreen for inviting me and the organization. It's such a pleasure to be with everyone today, especially talking about Lights Out Norlite and the fight that we have to do to close this facility permanently and not just temporarily. So, yeah, clap. It's a big thing. And really, we couldn't have gotten this temporary closure without grassroots activism and support from organizations like this and coalitions that are going to be standing up here today. So I just want another round of applause for everyone that's up here and the work that we continue to do. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Joe Ritchie, lifelong Cohoesier. I've lived for approximately 21 years at the Saratoga Sites Public Housing Development, which is literally a stone's throw away from the Norlite hazardous waste incinerator. We would, I'd be playing as a kid, and I would see dust plumes coming from the fence line from the Norlite facility that we would later learn to be hazardous silica dust that kids are playing in. So fast forward to today, I found out about Lights Out Norlite through the Sanctuary for Independent Media, who introduced me to people like Judith and Dave Pablo and many other wonderful folks that kind of reeled me in on this issue, because it was 2019, 2020 when we learned about the AFFF incineration, and that's the hazardous PFAS chemicals that Norlite was illegally incinerating millions upon millions of pounds that the DEC knowingly let them do. So when I found that out, I was outraged, and I joined the cause for Lights Out Norlite and have been leading the way to get this facility shut down so we can have justice for those at Saratoga sites who are no longer there, because through grassroots organizing, we were able to close the Saratoga Sites Public Housing Development and relocate folks to safer housing so they don't have to raise their children in these dust piles, in these areas where they're playing with black snow and their hands are getting dirty because of that. That's the only thing that they know. So I'm really happy that we've been able to relocate folks and get them to safer housing. And thank you. And for me, I think this is a first in the nation that a public housing development has been moved and uprooted because of the environmental danger living next to a facility like Norlite presents. And in the coming years and such, that housing development will actually be demolished, and the city of Cohoes will do what they do to remediate the soil and also choose what they want to do with the land. We fought hard. Norlite was a bidder on that land, and we fought hard for them not to get that land. So grassroots organizing does work, and we're seeing it in real time in Cohoes, New York, and in the Capital Region. Something that's really exciting that I want to share with you all that's happened within the last week, that we have flyers out in the front that I would love to talk to you all about. The Albany County legislator has introduced a bill, Local Law E, that would prohibit the mixture of Norlite's fly ash into their aggregate material. And just to get you a little bit of a rundown really quickly, Dave Pablo, who I see back there, knows this to the T and the science, so maybe after you could talk to him more about the specifics. But in layman's terms, they essentially have this waste ash that they get from their production, and they've been mixing it with the material that they sell to the public that is able to construct buildings all across the country. And this material can have hazardous materials like mercury and all heavy metals, PFAS even, maybe back when they were incinerating the PFAS. So we're really trying to get them to stop selling this material and combining it, because we found that the aggregate material is sometimes 90 to 100% this waste material. And you don't want, hello? There we go. You don't want that in your school. I found out one of my buildings at Syracuse University, which I'm a proud alum of, actually was built with Norlite aggregate. The Freedom Tower down in New York City, built with Norlite aggregate. So We have to make sure that they can no longer do this because it's hazardous to us just living there with the piles so high. They're bigger than any building in Cohoes and blowing on us, but to protect communities across the country and if not the globe, because the impacts that happen at Norlite not only have impacts in Cohoes, but the entire globe, because this stuff is going everywhere. And we need work from the community to get this type of law passed at the Albany County Legislature, which we have flyers and more information about this particular law. But we've been able to do it before with the PFAS fight. We've been able to pass national leading laws in the PFAS to ban incineration of PFAS and at the state level, at the county level, and at the city level. And we're looking to do this now at the county level because we have great supporters with County Legislator Mert Simpson and County Legislator Bill Reinhardt. So we're really excited for their help, but we need each and every single one of you to call a county legislator and say, we need you to pass local law E, because if not, we cannot protect our communities. And we really, while Norlite's temporarily closed, we need to give them the finishing blow. I also consider myself a pacifist, but when it comes to Norlite hurting my community for decades, I'll make an exception. And it's been such a pleasure working with people like Judith Ank, who have been such a role model for me with environmental activism. People like Dave Pablo back there, he's trying to be discreet. They've taught me a lot in the last few years, and I'm forever grateful of their help and their leadership, because being a resident of this type of facility, next to this type of facility for 20 years, when you start to learn all of this information, you get a little scared for yourself. But they've always kind of focused me back in and really made me think about the broader impacts of the community. I hope to live a long life. I really do. I'm scared. I'm genuinely scared what the impacts of living next to Norlite could do to my health. But I don't want another Joe Ritchie playing in the fields of Saratoga sites or in Cohoes even to experience a Norlite facility anymore. We can stop this, and we are almost there with a temporary closure. And one of the biggest things for me, especially being from Cohoes, because we're so blunt, which I think makes me a really good advocate, is I say what's on my mind. And when you're an advocate, don't be afraid to tell your local elected officials what you feel, because they need to hear it. They need to hear it from you, because for decades, we were always told that what we're experiencing, the dust on our cars, the smells, it's coming from 787, the highway. You don't have to worry about it. The black snow that we played in, you don't have to worry about it. That's coming from the trucks. Well, guess what? One night I went out, I said, I've had enough. I've had enough of this crap. And I tested, I sent the dust, I scraped it off with a playing card, I think, at the time, scraped it off of the car. I sent a picture to our group at Lights Out Norlite, and I said, does this look normal? This happened overnight. My car was enveloped in dust. It looked yellow, greenish. It was really a scary thought, because I had just washed the car a couple days before. And Dr. Dave Walker, who is a world-renowned professor in Columbia University, who's a part of our group, said, that dust looks awfully familiar. Please send that to me. So I sent it down to him. He tested it. And just by looking through a microscope, he said, that looks like volcanic ash. You don't have those in Cohoes. No volcanoes in Cohoes except the Norlite volcano. And that's really when the alarm bells started to fire off in my head. And really, through activism, we were able to prove the local elected officials who have for decades downplayed the situation at Saratoga sites and Cohoes that there was nothing wrong. Well, guess what? There was. And the DEC knew about it the entire time. So that's why we've gotten up. We've said enough's enough. We're going to shut the lights out on Norlite because we've had enough. Our neighbors are getting displaced. Our mothers, our brothers, our family members, our neighbors are all getting impacted. I'm getting a little too excited up here, I guess, by this facility. And that's why we formed the organization Lights Out Norlite to officially turn the lights off on this damn facility and say goodbye. I work for Spectrum in their government affairs department, but very deeply involved. In Lights Out Norlite, we meet every month, 3-4 times a month for the past 4 or 5 years now. And that's how you have to get it done, consistency. You always have to meet, even if you think there's nothing to meet about. There's always something to talk about in this type of fight that we're in.
I'm Barbara Heinzen. I moved to the Capital Region in 2011. I'd spent 30 years living in London, working internationally, and I was helping international organizations and local organizations imagine the futures they might have to face, whether they like them or not. I worked with Shell, who taught me this technique called scenario planning. I worked with various government departments, mostly in developing countries, Africa, Asia, sometimes in Latin America. And I did a lot of work in East Africa with a civil society organization thinking about the future, first of Kenya, then Tanzania, and then Uganda. What might we have to face, whether we like it or not? I'm still doing that work whenever anybody rings me, but what was interesting in all that time was that the last subject anyone ever thought about was the environment. It was just not on the radar. Climate change was not on the radar. I remember asking someone in the chemicals department of Shell, can't you recycle this stuff? And he said, no, it's too hard. And I've never forgotten that. Someone I liked and respected. Now, these are all organizations that came of age at a particular time in history when we didn't think the environment mattered. All the rules are governed by that assumption. So I started writing about how do you change an entire social economic system when you have no model to follow? How do we include the environment in our day-to-day decisions so that it becomes profitable to protect the environment rather than destroy it? I then started an experiment with friends in East Africa where we each worked with our own learning sites to say, how can we improve this place environmentally and start to change the rules that govern what we do? I was living in central London. I had a flat. I had no site. Everybody else was choosing, somebody had 60 acres outside Nairobi, someone else in western Kenya, a seaweed growers cooperative in Tanzania. I had a front step with plant pots on it. So I ended up, after my parents died, using that inheritance to buy about 15 acres on the bank of the Hudson River where the Ravena-Coeymans Creek enters the Hudson, because I heard that riparian sites were very biodiverse. And I wanted to see if I could manage this site for greater biodiversity. And then my neighbors, as I got to know them, started saying, have you heard about the Port of Coeymans? They're just up here, and they want to take that 400 acres where the children used to play called the Ponderosa, and they want to turn it into an industrial park. We have to stop it. Well, I want to tell you we failed completely to stop that. The Port of Coeymans owner is, he has a way of using his influence, let's put it that way. And at a certain point, we got a very good town supervisor in place. And in December of, I think it was his first year, we heard from Mike Ewall of Energy Justice Network that Connecticut was planning to send 1/3 of its garbage to the local cement plant in Ravena so that Ravena Cement could burn it for fuel. Now, we know that's pretty toxic. We know it's unpredictably toxic. And we managed between the 15th of December and the end of the year to persuade Connecticut this was a bad idea. And one of the people who helped us do that was our esteemed speaker, Ms. Judith Enck. That then attracted other people to looking at what was going on. Christine Primomo, who's here, joined us. Diana Abadi, who's been working in Athens on issues there, she joined us. Sonia Stark, who's running the video, she joined us. And we began to look at clean air issues and the use of the waterfront. We managed to get the Connecticut waste stopped. We managed to get the DEC to forbid the cement plant to burn tires, which they were very keen to do. And they were particularly keen to do it because the Port of Coeymans had a contract to pick up tires from around the state. And oh boy, what better place to use them than in the local cement plant. It was a nice confederacy of, well, if not dunces, something else. And we then, after passing a clean air law in Coeymans, we passed a clean air law, we helped to pass a clean air law in Albany County. And as soon as that was passed, we had a new town administration come in, and they were very much in the hands of the business people, and they trashed our local clean air law, and they made it impossible for the Albany clean air law to take effect. So we have been fighting this combination of the Port of Coeymans, which manages a lot of waste, and many of the businesses that are in their new industrial park are managing waste. And we managed to, well, we didn't manage it, but we helped create greater awareness of these issues in Coeymans, in Albany County. And the latest wrinkle in the story is that the Port of Coeymans now says, we need a second dock in order to support the development of wind power in the capital region, wind power manufacturing. I believe they're going to use all these new facilities to expand their waste business. I have no way to prove it. But that's what I suspect is going on. But we now have a more sympathetic town administration, and the port put in another application for GE to build wind power manufacturing on a wooded area full of ravines along the Hudson River that's part residential and part industrial. We managed to stop that from happening and getting approval in the town before December, the end of December last year. So we're pushing all the time at what's happening to the river. When I asked Diana why she bothered to be with us, she said, we need to protect the river. Christine said, we need to protect the air that we're producing here. We have to protect what's going on. All the incentives are to destroy. So in addition to our local activism and trying to change laws, how do we change the basic rules so that when I actually increase the biodiversity of my 15 acres and get rid of the damned invasive plants, what reward do I get? At the moment, I get nothing. But the Port of Coeymans gets a lot of reward for destroying its habitats. How do we change those rules? There's some very fundamental issues going on here. And I think the challenge of the 21st century is to include the natural world in our economic system in a positive way, not a destructive way. That's why I've bothered to do this, because frankly, I hate activism. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you almost never see a result. But I think we need to do it anyway. So with that, I'll quit.
Thank you.
So I'm Greg Kimball-Cohen, and I'm the managing officer of Timber, which is a small public interest outfit based out of Troy, working to support the interests of working people. This issue of lead pipes in Troy is a little bit unlike anything else that I've ever worked on, in that what is overwhelmingly accepted and undisputed about lead is much broader than issues that I've worked on in the past, where there is no big lead. Nobody protecting the interests of lead, nobody saying we need to put more lead pipes into the ground. If they exist, I haven't met them. But what there is a very large resource cost that people would like to defer or avoid entirely. And so that is how opposition to lead service line replacement presents itself, which is a new thing for me. And so there are a lot of incentives to basically not peek under the hood because you might notice a problem. In November 2022, I was on Facebook God knows why, but I was on Facebook, and I saw a message from a mother named Jonna Favreau, whose children had just gotten lead tests, and she had found that she had extremely elevated blood lead levels, that the children had extremely elevated blood lead levels. And they'd been going over the house, like trying to figure out what the source could possibly be. Lead pipes, you know, how it's talked about relative to other sources of lead contamination sort of varies depending on where the discourse is, but it's not usually the first place that people look. But they had winnowed down the possibilities to probably lead pipes. At the same time, I had caught like a small detail about Troy's public finances, and a friend and former colleague, Rob Hayes over at Environmental Advocates New York, also caught hold through a separate foil of a very closely related issue. And so we all got together and looked at the issue from our respective angles and started bringing in other advocates and other community members. And what was ultimately clear to us was that the city of Troy had received over $500,000 for lead service line replacement from the Department of Health in 2017, and in late 2022 had spent none of that money. And had not made significant progress on getting to that point. 4 months later, with quite a lot of pressure and heartache and hard work, Mayor Madden at the time committed to replacing 100% of the lead service lines in the city of Troy at no direct cost to residents, which is the first commitment of that type in the state of New York, to my knowledge. What started out as, however you account for it, either $0 or just over $500,000 of investment into the lead service line replacement program in early 2023 has now morphed into a total investment of $33 million, 17 million of which directly support lead service line replacement, a number that just got much higher thanks to the bipartisan infrastructure law, which accounts for almost 13 million of it, but also ARPA, and it doesn't matter. The point is that I'm driving at here, beyond just like this story of lead service line replacement in Troy, there are a couple things. One is that these are complicated issues, it is easy to think someone's taking care of it, but by asking questions and talking to your neighbors and sort of piecing together the puzzle, you can actually get pretty far in understanding what an issue is. And that's especially important for things where you might take for granted that it's being taken care of, or where there's a significant disincentive to taking care of the problem. So that's one of the things. And then the other is, the only reason why Troy was able to access that money was because the issue was presented, and the information was collected, and Troy went from single-digit reporting on whether there are lead service lines in Troy to now close to 50%. And that meant that Troy had the best inventory in the state, or probably the best inventory in the state. And that meant that it was unambiguous that they needed the lead service line money from the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so like all of those little acts of reporting just, your own house or getting your neighbors to report, it all adds up. We're now in a position where the Troy's as well positioned as any other city to get this done, and it happened in about a year. So I'll leave it there and answer any questions later.
A little bit about me. I'm retired from the State Office of Mental Health. I had a career as a mental health administrator. Then shortly after that, I was a drug counselor for a few years, and then now I'm retired, and now this is my job. So that's my day job, and my wife constantly reminds me I'm spending way too much time at this. So I was never in, anything like this before this situation. So how I got into it, one day I was looking at the Times-Union, and they had a picture of the school next to the landfill, and I call that my WTF moment. I said, this can't be. This can't be. This is not real. And I said, how could the state ever approve this? And if you don't know about this situation, go out to our table. We've got videos, we've got pictures. You cannot believe this. So the school, okay, is a 1,000-person school with a 3-county BOCES program in it. It was opened in 2008. 2008, 4 years later, the DEC approved this C&D dump at what was a gravel mine, which is still a gravel mine, but now it has a CD component to it. So everybody knew the school was there. They knew it, and they still approved it. That still blows my mind that that happened. And we looked into it. We looked into the original application. We looked into how the approval was done, and you would hardly know there was a school there if you read the paperwork. It's unbelievable how that happened. Now, we don't know what really happened. We don't know if the governor said put it there. We'll never know that, which could be possible. Anyway, so you have to go look at the table if you don't know about this situation, because it really tells you the story. The location of the school, it's also just by Route 90. So you've got that. You've got the school sandwiched between Route 90 and a C&D dump, which takes debris from 7 states, okay? 100 trucks a day. That's 200 trucks round trip right through the city of Rensselaer. So the route through the city of Rensselaer, it goes through Broadway, and then it comes up what's called Partition Street. Now, Partition Street is a very hilly street. There's very steep hills up and down. Okay, these trucks, when they're loaded, they weigh like 80,000 pounds. When they come up that hill, they can't go more than 5 miles an hour. The noise from those diesel trucks is unbelievable. And I've been there several times. I have to wear earplugs. We stand on a sidewalk. We've used a decibel meter. The readings of decibels, the highest reading I think we got was like 107 decibels from the sidewalk. That's like standing next to a jet plane. It's so loud. Okay, so you've got the noise. You've got the constant noise that people that live there are exposed to. And the houses on that street are old houses. They're built close to the street. They're not that far from the street. People park on the street. They try to walk on the sidewalk. You've got this going by. We don't know about the diesel exhaust because it's never been measured that we know of. But the sound, that acute noise, that causes cardiac problems, anxiety. There's a lot of health issues from chronic noise, and it's just the people who live there, it's just not fair. So, I can talk about the school more. But the other thing that we discovered, and we discovered it with help from a group called PEER, which is Professional Employees for Environmental Responsibility. They funded a test for PFAS for us to use in the groundwater, little creeks and streams on the outside of the landfill. And we found PFAS. So, PEER reported that to DEC, and DEC said, oh, it's really nothing, it's everywhere anyway. It's not coming from the landfill. So, lo and behold, we didn't know this at the time, but DEC, right after we revealed that information, ordered the landfills to start testing their groundwater inside the landfill for PFAS. And lo and behold, they found it. But because a lot of it did not exceed standards, they kind of said, oh, it's no big deal. But there's something called leachate. Leachate is the fluid that comes through the landfill from rain and snow and it goes to the bottom, and it goes into collection ponds. So what happens with that leachate is it's tanker trucked every week to the Albany County wastewater treatment plant in Menands. So what happens with the leachate goes through a regular sewage treatment plant. What it does to the PFAS is it actually we've been told this by scientists, it changes the structure of the PFAS so it's actually augmented. And that PFAS is going in the Hudson River. And it's also going in the sludge, which is a byproduct of the sewage treatment plant. We don't know, I don't really know what happens with all the sludge, but it's going in the Hudson. So PFAS is going down the Hudson, and it's not just this landfill, it's all the other landfills are doing the same thing. But it's in the air, it's in the water, it goes in the soil. We know it's everywhere. It's very dangerous, and so far, nothing's been done. So let me bring you up to date a little bit on the permit renewal. So we had probably 250 written comments submitted to DEC by people like you. Some of you have probably done that. And that was the comment period ended at the end of August. So here we are today. And the only thing that has come up since then is that the Dunn landfill on their website put a letter that was to the permit administrator that is responsible for the landfill for the permit review, and the letter said they were considering reducing the number of trucks to 80 a day with a lot of qualifications, and changing the times of the trucks. The times right now for the trucks are from 6:30 in the morning to I think it's 5:30 at night. They were considering changing the times to 7:45 in the morning to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, that sounds really good. It's a nice sort of bright, shiny object. They also said that they wanted to reapproach Rensselaer County to use the sewer system for the leachate. In other words, put it right, do what they're doing now, tankering it to Albany County Waste, but put it in the sewer system. So as soon as we saw that, we went to the county, and the county legislature in writing said there's no way we're going to allow that to happen. And they also said they want the facility closed, which they've said before because they've passed resolutions. The other part of this was, so the city of Rensselaer, the Hudson Mohawk chapter of the Sierra Club, and us are the three groups that have requested party status, which means we have a sort of an advanced seat at the table as further things develop. If there's different hearings and things like that, we can be represented, and we have legal representation. And so I talked to the mayor, and the mayor hosted a meeting with our legal representatives, and we came up with a letter which basically said, you know, this is an unsatisfactory, incomplete response to all the comments that have been made, and we'd like to know more what's going on. I know the mayor is here today because I could see him right there. Maybe he'll ask a question or say something afterwards. So we cut that off at the pass, we think, but we don't know because we haven't heard from DEC. So that's kind of like where things stand. I just wanted to mention a couple of other quick things. I don't know how my time is because I tend to talk too much. I know so much, it gets cluttered in my head. So you know about the Climate Leadership and Communities Protection Act, right? And they come up with these disadvantaged communities data, which Rensselaer has 2 zones that are disadvantaged communities. And they are, if you look at the overall vulnerability of, there's several factors in those which I'm not going to go into, but they compare those 2 zones with the rest of the 4,900 other census tracts in the state of New York. Rensselaer in the 2 zones are 98 and 92% higher than the rest of the state census tracts in vulnerability. And that includes all kinds of things like health, all kinds of things, population density, just, it goes on for there's about 30 categories. There's a lot of health information on there. One of the ones that really jumps off because it has to do with air is COPD emergency room visits are at 93% higher than the rest of New York State. 93%. Asthma is up there for emergency room visits, 63%. Someone asked me about DEC and whether they would be make a change to help us out in this situation. We don't know, but I can tell you from what I've seen, what I've read, DEC is pro-business. It's kind of like it's in their system. You know, the people who work there, they're well-intended, but they have to work within the system they're in. And so the other part of it is they work with the businesses on a regular basis. The people involved in permitting, they work with the businesses. Groups like us, we come into the picture when they have a special hearing or we ask for a meeting. We're not regularly included in the process, so it's kind of like stacked in a way because they know the people in the businesses. They don't know us so well, so it's kind of like it's a little one-sided. It's not quite fair, I would say. The other thing I wanted to mention too is the agreed amendment. So you all know about that, I'm sure. In the first case to reach the New York State Court of Appeals about the Green Amendment is about a landfill in Monroe County. And the only thing that was continued by the Supreme Court to go to the Court of Appeals is the constitutional issue. So DEC is asking for a dismissal of this case. And our lawyers, we have Pace University Law Center is representing us. So they filed a brief on our behalf. Several other groups have had briefs filed too. And basically our brief says that DEC is trying to say that the permit process, which can take years, it can take literally years, is the way to guarantee people's constitutional rights. And that just can't be. And our lawyers are saying this has to be decided by the courts because this is a constitutional right. This is not something you can tickle for a few years while the people are still experiencing the problems and say that their constitutional rights are being protected. You can't use a permit process. The DEC is not responsible for your rights. It's got to be the courts that does. So hopefully something will come from that. I've talked a lot, so I'm going to stop for now and see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Bob.